Okay, so part one. Again, my name is Kavina. If you're watching, I'm so happy you're here. So, let's start from the very beginning, okay? So, my parents were both in the Air Force when they met. My mother was 20, my father was 30, and they got together. I will never say they fell in love because you'll find that out later. Yeah, I don't. I would never. Anyway, so they got married. My mother became pregnant with moi. Well, actually, she had several miscarriages before I came. I believe the number is 8 from what I remember. And her pregnancy with me was quite difficult because I'm not sure the details, but there was great concern that I wasn't going to make it, and I ended up being about 6 weeks premature. I was a cute little baby. I came out, I was 5 pounds and some ounces. I had these big eyes and I had curly hair. I was super cute, but preemie. So 1 years old, my parents divorced, and my father took full custody of me. It was agreed that I would spend summers with my mother wherever she was, but my father took full custody. And with that, he was stationed in Japan. So he moved me across the world from California, where I was born, to Tokyo, Japan, Yokota Air Force Base. I still remember getting on the airplane, even being so young. I remember saying goodbye to my mother and not, fully understanding what was happening, and watching her turn around and walk away and screaming for her, but she wouldn't turn around. And I cried most of the way to Japan. I cried most of the way there. And that is the beginning of pain, that I didn't understand. I didn't have the support to cope. You'll learn more about my father as we go. I didn't have the support. Even if I did, I was just a baby. I couldn't articulate how I felt or why. All I knew was mommy wasn't here, and no one had explained to me why. So I'm 1 year old. I live with my father in base housing, and in this time he started molesting me. He was obsessed with my butt. That was, where it started. And there was also in that time, between 1 and 4 years old, where I was introduced to pornography because of him. And this was also the beginning of the emotional incest between me and my father. I realize now as an adult that he never really saw me as his daughter. I was more of a, if not an object, I was more of a wife to him than his child. So that was happening. He was raising me. He really didn't. I was left to my own devices. I was very shy, very quiet, very reserved. So I didn't have friends, really. So, that didn't help. It was just me and this man in a house, So fast forward to 4 years old. He brings home his new wife. I never met her before he brought her home. I didn't even know she existed. So they got married. He brought her home. That's how I met her. And it started out fine, that mommy wound, she filled it, it was nice having a woman in the house. She cooked. She's Japanese. She's a Japanese woman, so she would cook, and she cleaned, and it was just nice having a woman in the house. And this is also about the time that I started speaking Japanese. I realized that from watching television and just being around Japanese people that I had picked up the language. And so she didn't speak. She spoke very good English, actually. And so but she still struggled. Okay. So one day I told her, again, this is the beginning of our relationship. I, just recently met her. I told her in Japanese that she could speak to me in Japanese and I could understand her. And so that is, how I became bilingual. Japanese was actually my first language for, while she was in the house. Excuse me. And she also taught me how to read and write it. And she exposed me more to the Japanese culture. She would take me home to her parents' house. I actually loved them. They're so nice. Her dad was a doctor, so they had for Japan a very large house, and so I loved going to visit. Her mom, I called her Cha-chan, and she would cook me all this food. She would cook me whatever I wanted. She was so nice. I loved that woman. But this is also around the time where she started beating me and molesting me. One of her favorite things to do was she would hold, I was 4, 4. And so I could spill something. I could forget to brush my teeth. I don't know. It was nothing. From what I've been told, I was a very easy child. I was very well behaved. I was not a problem child. So one of her favorite things to do was she would hold my hands over my head like this with one hand, and then she would just slap me over and over with the other. And of course, she did all this behind my father's back, although very quickly the effects of the abuse started to show. I was very jumpy. I started wetting the bed. I started dissociating. And my father, he suspected, years later, he told me he suspected something was happening, but clearly he didn't do anything about it. So she would just, and if I said, I did try, like, towards the beginning, and I was, probably within the first year of it starting, I'm still 5 years old. I tried telling him, and he would confront her, scream. It would be a big fight, and she would just come back and beat me harder. So I stopped telling him, and I guess he forgot. I don't know. Who knows? I have no idea. So that was happening. She was, also, she started verbally abusing me as well. I was fat, I was ugly, I was stupid. I was never going to be anything in life, but a housewife, that kind of thing. And really, she started torturing me. Math has never been my strong point, and so when I was little, when I was learning how to count, again, I hadn't even gotten into preschool yet. I was learning how to count. She would do things like I'd be taking a bath, and out of nowhere she'd decide to come in and help me practice my numbers. So I remember very distinctly, I would, for whatever reason, again, I was still just learning, but I would skip 4. I would skip 4. And so every time I did that, she would hold my head down in the bathtub. And she did that over and over and over. And I could, the water got cold. I think she slammed my head down hard enough that my nose started bleeding. She kept going. I wasn't allowed to stop. So it was things like that. So this continued, and it kept getting worse. I'm fat. She started restricting my food. I wasn't allowed to have seconds. I wasn't allowed to have candy. She barely let me have juice. If I had it, if we were out and someone asked me if I wanted some and I said yes, I got in trouble. She'd beat me for it later. And so yeah, that was also the beginning of my eating disorders. Okay. So now I'm 5. Okay, this is 5 years old. She put me in ballet. I also did some local theater, and I also did swimming. Now ballet, I fell in love with ballet. Of course, there was an adjustment period because, again, I was with Japanese children who had never seen a black person before. So, for the first couple of weeks, I had to deal with, that deer in the headlight stare. But, they got used to me, and I actually made friends with them. And, ballet as an art it gave me confidence because it was something that I was actually good at. You know, I was naturally flexible. I could get my legs up, you know, I could wrap both my legs behind my head, and you know, I just really loved it. It was fun. And you know, my stepmom wasn't there, and you know, it was my escape, and I just loved it. And I was in Cinderella. I did do Cinderella. I remember that one. And I did, there was a couple other ones too. But I loved being on stage. Okay, just something. I mean, if you, any of you, you know, if you done theater, if you're a dancer or anything like that, you understand. Like, there's just something about getting on the stage, and you know, the smells and the lights, and then that curtain comes up, and you just go for it. And then the applause at the end. Oh my gosh, I just loved it. Okay. So I was doing that. That was fun. And the theater I did, like, she took me to like auditions. Like I've done like the casting calls. And so I actually did a few like local theater productions, musicals, super fun. And she was really into the art. She was an interesting woman. She took me to some drag king shows, drag king and drag queen. So back in the 90s, when like men doing ballet still wasn't as big of a thing as it is now. Like, she took me to those shows, like, you know, the men's version of Swan Lake. It was a comedy. I remember that. She took me, I guess she was part of a drag king uh, uh, studio or something. And so she would take me to see some of those musicals again, where, you know, and other musicals. Like, she was very much into the arts, and so she did expose me to the performing arts, which is something that I still love today. And then swimming. I did enjoy swimming for a while, until I got to, the way the swimming was set up. So they had like two different time slots. The first one was for like kindergarten up to like 6th grade. Okay. And then the next one was for, you know, everybody else, the big kids. And so everybody was organized by, oh my gosh, by age. And the way you could tell us apart was we all had different colored caps. So the little babies, like the preschoolers or kindergartners, they had yellow hats. And then next was red, and then it was orange, and then it was green. And so yellow and orange were easy and a lot of fun. I did enjoy it. But then as the levels progressed, I don't know if I don't know. But as I progressed and the kids got older, they got meaner. So I started dealing with bullying there. Like, the entire class, you know, or classes, the bigger classes, they would circle around me and push me and beat me and spit on me, all in front of the teachers. The teachers saw it. They saw all of it. You know, they heard the name calling. They, you know, saw me. They saw it. And they didn't do anything. They didn't help me. And so, and I know because one of the teachers, this was, I want to say, Orange Cap. It was this woman. I liked her. She was a nice lady. But she, one time she was like, I'm sorry. Sorry. And that was it. So that went on. So I did that. So actually, I probably did that for like swimming for 2 to 3 years. And I stopped at the green. So the highest level was green. That was where the worst of the bullying was. And that's also where I learned how to fight back, where I became violent. I had this moment. I just couldn't take it anymore. And I just started hitting them all back. And then they did leave me alone. But I quit at 6, the green cap, because the next class, it was a later class. They were, again, the big kids, and I was terrified that I would have to go through what I already did again, just with even bigger kids. And so I quit. So I quit there. Now that just covered, that was, about 3 years. But so going back to the stepmother, ballet, and all this, and being around the, Japanese kids. In this time, I also I discovered masturbation. So I was starting to do that all the time. Like I would say I was addicted to it. If I wasn't doing anything, I was in my room masturbating. And that started in preschool. Yep, that was preschool. So about 4 years old. So in this time, this woman is beating me. So she would send me to preschool with a bloody nose. Like she would beat me in the car on the way there. And then I would have to get there and lie. I fell. No, I'm fine. That kind of thing. And so that continued. And also note, due to my early exposure to sex and sexuality, I never went through the stage where I disliked boys. I had never went through that stage. I actually really liked boys, and I also realized that I liked girls too. Which, okay, put that aside. Okay, so I'm, 5 years old. I'm in preschool, and I like boys, and I like boys and girls, like them in a sexual, both in a sexual way. So first grade, that's so now. Okay, now we're on to first grade. Okay, and by now I am severely depressed. I'm paranoid. Being off base, outside of the Air Force Base is what really solidified my paranoia, because riding the trains and, going places where, people you just don't see, black people regularly, and just, being stared at, wherever I went, that really solidified paranoia. I was twitchy enough as it was from what was going on at home, but then I was going out and just, just always, worried that someone was watching me. And then most of the time they were. So, um, so I was, paranoid. I was depressed, violent now because I had learned how to hit back. I had learned how to hit. And, no one stopped me and no one said anything. So it became like I felt powerful, I became, later on I became a bully myself, but I I liked feeling like I had some control. And I was also increasingly becoming more and more angry. I didn't have an outlet. I didn't really have I had ballet for a while. That was actually taken away from me. But it, an hour, a week, it was not, it wasn't enough to offset everything else. And so, I was becoming increasingly more and more angry, more sad. And so, now I'm about 6 years old, and my stepmother becomes pregnant. And I'm going to stop there for now. That's part 1, so stay tuned for part 2.